Good afternoon, YouTube family and friends. As you might have deduced from the thumbnail, the first week of my vacation has not gone quite according to plan. If you don't follow me on Facebook or Instagram at CP59Fit, seeing the picture of me in front of an emergency room may have surprised you. As a meme on Facebook said this week, enjoy those 20s, 30s, 40s, because when you get to the 50s, the check engine light's going to come on. And I did have a check engine light come on this week. Not in my car, but in my brain, or at least my face. After about 20, 30 minutes of walking or being on my feet, 2 or 3 times between, I guess, when I arrived here Saturday and Wednesday when I finished the museum tour, from about here to here, went tingly on my face. I kind of forgot about it the first time until it happened again after the museum tour, and I said, maybe I should get in touch with Dr. Mabry. So let me put a disclaimer in here. Everything I discuss on this channel is based on what is best for me and my health. If it relates to you and your health, that is wonderful. And I think about 80 to 90% of it would fit anybody. But all of our bodies are different. We all have different backgrounds. We've all done different amounts of damage to ourselves over the years. So don't take everything I say as 100% applicable to you and your situation. The general guidelines are you'd like to keep your fasting glucose below 100. You'd like to keep your ketones somewhere between 0.3 and 1.0. But that's if you want to get into ketosis and lose weight through a ketogenic diet. The kind of acceptable definition of a low-carb, high-fat diet is when you get your carbs down to about, some people would say as low as 150, most say about 120 or less. The medically supervised people I have say I should keep them at 30 or less, which I have done for the first 3 months of being supervised by them. I was probably a little bit higher before I started with them as in the previous 3 months when I was starting the carnivore diet. But let's get back to this week. I took a nice slow path to get to Branson because I didn't want to have any stress this week, or this 2 weeks. My birthday is April 30th. My last day at work was April 14th. I had a doctor's appointment with Dr. Mabry on April 15th. I think I have made one video since I was up here, but I got my hair really cut off on, I think it was Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. I guess I actually went to the museum tour on Tuesday, and that's when I had I don't really remember. They're closed. I know they're closed on Monday. I think they're closed on Tuesday, so it may have been Wednesday when it was probably Thursday when I got the haircut. So I haven't made a video since I got the haircut. But he actually cut it a little bit shorter than I thought. I said use a 4 on the top and a 2 on the sides, but it kind of looks like he may have used the 2 all over. Maybe he read the number wrong. I don't know, but I know on Thursday I was definitely emailing back and forth with Dr. Mabry. I think it was Wednesday evening after the museum tour that I first emailed him and said, I'm having some symptoms I've never had. I don't believe they're connected to the low-carb way of eating, and I think time has proven that that's accurate. I also don't think they're connected to my previous stroke. I do fairly well know what signs of a stroke are, and I've never known one only to affect one side of your face nowhere else in your body. I had perfect strength in my hand. I could lift my leg. I could lift my arm, both arms. I guess you got to check both sides, but I always check the left since that's the side I was paralyzed on. But of course, Dr. Mabry being in Texas and me being in Branson, he couldn't really see me or diagnose anything, so he would just give me some suggestions or some maybe worries that he had. And he first off said a stroke or a TIA could not be ruled out, but that he was more worried that I had an aneurysm, and when I was walking, especially here, it's hilly. It's a little bit higher elevation than Fort Worth, but even though they call them mountains, it's not real high elevation. So I thought altitude sickness, but it's not high enough to be that. So he said it could be an aneurysm or it could be a pinched facial nerve. Because apparently you have a very small opening right here that a nerve comes from your brain to your ear, and if I were clenching my jaw or really pushing or something in my walking or standing, that I could have pinched that. But he thought it was best excuse me, that I go to a neurologist and have it checked out and do what they call a MRA, which is a MRI angiogram. I'm not sure what angiogram means, but it has something to do with your brain. So I kind of hunted around for a neurologist. I checked my insurance website. There appeared to be some in town. When I called the number, they were only neurological surgery. Not ready for that until I know what it is. Sorry, I had to cut the air on earlier, and that cold air blowing down my throat is making my throat a little scratchy. So by the time Dr. Mabry and I emailed back and forth for about 24 hours, and then I slept on it and got up Friday morning and tried to figure out where I could go to have an MRA done. Called my insurance concierge, I guess. It's another company that the insurance company has that tries to tell you where you can get the cheapest service in network, and they referred me to 2 urgent care centers here. Apparently there's 2 hospital systems in this area, Mercy and Cox, which used to be Skaggs. So they had Skaggs down on the insurance and Mercy. So first stop closest to the hotel was Mercy Urgent Care. I asked the lady if they could do an MRA. She said, I've never heard of that. She looked on her list and there was an MRI. I said, yeah, it's a type of MRI. She said, yeah, we can. So they registered me, checked me in. The nurse calls me back for triage, and I said, my doctor would like me to have an MRA. She said, oh, that can't be done here. We don't do that kind of imaging here. That's something you need at a hospital, so you probably need to go to the emergency room, which is what somebody had told me when I called them trying to get it set up. Dr. Mabry also advised me that it might take up to 3 weeks to get into a neurologist, so I thought, okay, I'll go to the ER. I went down to Cox. They were very nice people. Very efficient, got me in, got me triaged. As soon as the room opened up in the ER, they had me back. By the time the lady took my blood, got the IV poured in. So they didn't have an IV, but they needed it for the contrast. On what they ended up doing was a CTA with contrast, which is a CAT scan angiogram with contrast, which injects something into your body that runs through your brain real fast, and while the CAT scan is x-raying it, it highlights the blood vessels and arteries, and they can see if you have an aneurysm, a stroke, a leakage, or a balloon. And so the doctor tells me, well, we only have one MRI machine, but this CTA with contrast is very accurate in finding aneurysms. So we're going to do that. But ultimately, once they found out I had a stroke, I think they had already predetermined that it was a series of TIAs before they even did any work, because that is the diagnosis they came out with. I'm going to have to get a second opinion on that because I do not believe they are TIAs. I'm not saying it couldn't be, because Dr. Mabry didn't rule it out either. So there might be a possibility that you can have a stroke that only affects nerves in your brain, in your face, of course, it affects nerves in your brain. I'd never heard of one, though. Every stroke I've ever heard affects your face and one side of your body. But I did find out from Dr. Mabry that facial nerves don't cross like your body nerves do. They go from, this side of the brain to this side of the face, whereas this side of the brain controls this side of the body, and this side of the brain controls that side of the body, but not so much from the neck up. It's more direct, and there's apparently 12 facial nerves. So he was saying it could be facial nerve or cranial nerve or something like that, number 7, which goes out through a very small hole in your skull to the ear. They did give me a copy of the CAT scan on a DVD or a CD disc. I haven't even taken it out of the envelope, that I can take back to a neurologist when I get home. But the good news is that I was cleared to drive, and the doctor came all excited. Well, you haven't had a stroke. I said, well, I told you that walking in here. I want to know what I did have. Well, we think you had a TIA. I'm like, whatever, this was a waste of time. But I didn't tell him that. But it wasn't really a waste of time, because I know I did not have an aneurysm, and fear of having an aneurysm was concerning me. Not so much that it would explode. Both Dr. Mabry and the ER doctor said, well, if exercise is causing it to flare up, then don't exercise, basically. But through this process, the stress, the uncertainty, what Dr. Mabry said was a potentially life-threatening situation, so yes, it would qualify to go to the emergency room, whether your insurance liked it or not. And they don't like it when you go to the emergency room unless you're carried in. But I didn't have a choice. There's no imaging centers around here that will take a referral from out of state. They will only take referrals from their own doctors. So, good news is I don't have an aneurysm. So that means most likely nothing's going to explode in my head as I drive over the mountains going home. Bad news is it kind of knocked me out of whack, out of ketosis, out of low carb eating. I kind of converted back to comfort food, maybe some potato chips with onion dip and some sourdough bread with butter. And then Saturday when I went to the show, I actually got a combo with some Diet Mountain Dew and popcorn. As Dr. Oden and I used to say, that's our vegetable for the day, to have popcorn at the movies. But popcorn is seriously not allowed on the way of eating I want to eat. But I knew that stuff they shot into my system was going to take some time to clear out. My ketones were reading low, which I've never had them read low. They've always been at least 0.1, sometimes 0.3, but generally somewhere between 0.5 and 1.2. So I effectively, through this, and stress will lower your ketones, anxiety, and where can you be in more stress than going to an emergency room where they might say you need emergency surgery? So I had heard this term carb cycling in, I think it was Dr. Saladino's YouTubes. Never really cared about it, never really listened